Welcome back, everyone. Aren't those two amazing films? I don't know how I somehow program things together, but when I watch them together, they seem to work. I hope they worked for you. Um, Serious subject matter, amazing sort of way that both of these are played out totally differently. But I do think that there's a lot of connection here. And I'm really thrilled to have the filmmaker of Keon with us, E.G. Bailey. Hey, E.G. And also the star of Take Your Bags a few years later, Keita Omowale Erskine. Hey, Keita, thanks for joining us. So let me just give a brief bio on these two gentlemen, and as well as on Camille Billups, who was the filmmaker of Take Your Bags. So E.G. Bailey was recently named one of Filmmaker magazine's 25 New Faces of Independent Film. He is a McKnight Media Artist Fellow, an Ivey award-winning artist, filmmaker, director, and producer. He is the recipient of a regional Emmy, a Hugh Knight Poetry Award from the Gwendolyn Brooks Writers Conference, and has his work archived in the Museum of Modern Art, which is mentioned in Take Your Bags. He's the editor for Petting Zoo, which debuted at the 65th Annual Berlin Film Festival, and has directed and assisted in plays well known in production houses such as the Guthrie, the Pillsbury. He's done Othello, Amiri Baraka's Wise, Juno, etc. And his credits just go on and on. His latest work includes the co-curation of America Now, which is a special film project which has taken place at the Tampere Film Festival in Finland, Latvia, and others. And E.G. is quite prolific. And we're going to talk some more with him about his current work. And now let me just introduce Keita Omowale Erskine. Keita is a writer from New Jersey, living in Chicago. He says that he loves words so much that he spends his workdays reading and writing and his nights talking about booze and food. His appearance in Take Your Bags with his cousin Camille Billups was an early highlight in their relationship, and one which highlighted many life lessons he will never forget. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Camille Billups, well, you should be. You definitely should be. She was one of a kind. She's truly a Renaissance woman, visual artist, filmmaker, archivist, a professor. Her work exhibited all over the world: Egypt, West Germany, Pakistan, Taiwan, the university. And she studied at the Sorbonne, the University of Paris-Sorbonne in Sorbonne. She worked with James Van Der Zee. She worked with poet Owen Dodson. She created the Harlem Book of the Dead, which includes a foreword by Toni Morrison. She was best known as a filmmaker, and this was one of her films from 1998, right, Keita?
Yeah.
And you were Olive how old?
3 years old.
All right, 3 years old, making his debut. Camille just recently passed away in New York, here in New York, in June of 2019. She was 85, and her husband Jim Hatch died shortly thereafter in March 2020. I can't believe it was just at the beginning of this whole COVID thing. And he was 91. And Camille had one daughter, Krista Victoria, who she has given up for adoption in 1961. And there's a great film about her as well that Camille did called Finding Krista, which we're doing a program with Third World Newsreel about coming up soon. But let's talk a little bit first to you, E.G. Let's talk a little bit about how you conceived of this film and why it was important for you to make it, particularly right now. Particularly right now.
Yeah, the inspiration for the film came in 2015, and that was the year that well, I mean, there was police brutality has always been happening, but it felt like that was a really kind of seismic year with so many deaths, especially it was in the wake of Trayvon and Michael Brown and Tamir, and the thing that really bothered me, I mean, in addition to everything surrounding those situations, was that we found out about Trayvon that he was interested in aeronautical engineering after the verdict, that he went to space camp.
Wow.
But immediately after after his death, he was victimized. You know, he was criminalized, and that's pretty much all you saw of him. And the same with Michael Brown, and it really bothered me that the victims would become yet victimized in another way in the media, but it's done in order to paint a particular picture to make it easier for the officers to get off. And so I was interested in showing the lives of young Black men and women prior to these incidents that happened with police brutality, because, like I said, we find out so much about them either after the verdict, or sometimes we don't find out at all. But knowing my own history, knowing the history of many, peers, and we have lives and dreams and ambitions and goals and purpose that we are here for and that we're trying to attain. But all of that gets lost in these situations, in the aftermath of it. And so for me, I wanted to create a film that really highlighted that and showed the beauty and joy of Black life, that these incidents are not what make up our life and our history and our legacy. And so that was really the inspiration. And I came back from the Berlin Film Festival that year, and was determined to make a film. And I immediately started writing the script, and wrote about 7 pages. And it was, sometimes early in a project, you feel like it's ready to go. I have everything, I'm ready to do it. But the cinematographer's wife got pregnant. And, normally, or at first you're like, you're upset, but looking back, it was actually a blessing in disguise, because it forced me to take the time to dig deeper into the story and what I wanted to do. And so I took that as a sign to go back in, and I ended up expanding the script to 25 pages. And then from there, started working on getting funding. And then because I hadn't shot a film in, at that time, about 8 years, I wanted to make a film that I could shoot in one day, one location, with a limited number of actors, just to get back into, get back on the bike and make sure that I still knew how to ride the bike. And that film ended up being New Neighbors, which ended up going to Sundance.
Wow.
And so, so we weren't able to shoot in 2016 because of that. So then in 2017, we were planning on shooting, but then the next cinematographer ended up getting to AFI. And so, and he had to leave and go to LA the same week that we were supposed to shoot. Wow. So I had to delay it yet another year. And so in 2018 is when we shot it. And then it took until August of 2019 to find the right editor to work on the project.
But it's amazing that it stayed relevant, so relevant through all those incarnations, and the fact that it was supposed to have been done so much earlier. It's still so relevant, unfortunately.
Well, that was my biggest fear, but as incidents continue to happen again and again, I realized that it would always be relevant. And so, but it also pushed me to really make sure that I was honoring the story and the project properly. And Yeah, because I wanted to make something that would last for a long time and speak to these issues.
Well, I think that's what drew me to this film immediately, is that we do get to see a side of young Black men that we never get to see. And Keita, as a young Black man, um, how did you relate to Keon, and just talk a little bit about how you think that this project with Camille, when you were so young, how it impacted you, or did it, as now, and looking back at it now as a young man.
Yeah, addressing Keon first. First of all, I loved it. It's beautiful, beautiful film. Thank you so much for creating it, EG. It was incredible.
Thank you.
The You're right. There so often we find out much later, whether it's months or sometimes sadly years, that these people who are victims of police brutality have these whole lives before this one moment that shattered their life, and we're almost never treated that way, as opposed to, I was a journalism major when I was in college, and there are direct comparisons with, a 3-year-old white child goes missing, and that child is given, this depth of experience and character to create a sense of empathy in the community, the American community at large, the world community, but the community that they come from as well, to get people to come out and support and look for this young person. But then Black people, Black adults, Black teenagers, people who have had actual depth of character and life experiences are reduced to
Mhm.
the headline and the aftermath. And so seeing a film that focuses so much on our actual stories leading up to these events, especially it's always impactful. Like we said, it remains, sadly, tragically remains extremely relevant. Um, but it was so much more impactful to see someone's life leading up to the tragedy than to see the tragedy and then to fill in the blanks afterwards, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we see way too often, right? I think that's the only way we were seeing um, this incident portrayed, and so to have it in reverse, I think it was brilliant, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really incredible. And
So,
then
Keita, how do you think? Yeah, how do you think? Or do you think that Camille and James Hatch, her husband, they were such amazing artists, and you used to hang out with them a lot, right?
yes, yeah, spent a lot of great days at the loft growing up. Yeah, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I was 3. I don't really remember very vividly uh, being there. I do remember Camille giving me the car that I'm playing with. That I did not bring with me. That was there. And I do remember, you can see we're looking off screen. We're looking behind the camera, and I'm not sure whether it was Jim or someone else involved in the production, who was like holding the paintings and the photos that she's talking about and showing them to us. I don't remember who was holding them, but I remember looking at them, and then I remember telling my mom I was done, and her coming in after the camera was cut and her picking me up. But what I remember more about it was the energy of the experience. I just remember Camille, as uh, anyone who does not know now knows, was an incredibly magnetic and really powerful person. And the although there are many through lines between the two films, the one that, like, when I first watched the two of them back to back, the one that brought me to tears was when patients start chanting "Black woman is God" in the coffee shop. And I thought, I mean, Camille would just love that. She would have gone over the moon for that. So I really, that really hit home for me. seeing those two, seeing Camille and I back to back with that image was really powerful. Um, uh, but yeah, I think that she was always good at showing you something without telling you,
Mm.
right? She was always good at making sure that you came to understand what she was talking about without having to directly. There was always a story. It was always a parable. It was always a saying, a quote. It was never the direct, this is what it is. And that made it that much more impactful when you came to understand what she was talking about. It made it that much, when you there's a lot of things that a lot of lessons that I'm still learning from her, even though, in the final years of her life, she was in throes of dementia, and I didn't get to spend as much time with her as I did growing up. There's things that I still learn from her because those lessons are still, they're percolating. And as I grow up and I experience things in the world, I learn more and more. And so, not just Take Your Bags, many, like I said, many experiences with her since then, but certainly being there and being part of that production has still, in some very subtle ways that I'm yet to understand, I'm sure, and in some very obvious ways that are clearer to me today in 2020 than they have been ever before. That was a very impactful experience for me.
And EG, you know Camille as well.
Yeah, briefly, she used to come to the Twin Cities and would do screenings, and she knew some of my mentors. So I had a chance to meet her on a few occasions, and she worked with the Walker Art Center also, and yeah, she had a commanding presence. Um, and she loved to dialogue, and so when her and James would come, it would be a gathering, and there would basically be everybody sitting in a circle, just discussing ideas and discussing art. It was great being a young person. I always think of in the company of elders and just gaining wisdom, and loving just how they would talk and interact, and the subjects that they would talk about. So just really, that feeling of sitting at the feet of elders, and hearing about experiences, and she would command the room, and wasn't afraid to speak her mind and deal with harsh truth and hard wisdom, and most of my elders are like that. I call it hard wisdom. They are not shy about telling you when your feet stink.
Absolutely not. And Camille definitely would not. I consider Camille one of my mentors, and I exactly went to her for that kind of advice when I needed it, because I knew she would give it to me. And I think we actually had that kind of a relationship as well, because I think she would come to me and ask me sort of, like, well, what do you think of this? And am I approaching this? Am I thinking about this? And I felt honored that she would come to me to ask my opinion on something. But she definitely is I keep saying is because I don't feel like she's gone. I mean, I think she is so present in so many ways. Third World Newsreel, who is the distributor of Take Your Bags, also distributes Finding Krista. And they asked me to do a program with Finding Krista on, I think it's October 29th, we're doing, with myself and another colleague, Michelle Prettyman. We're going to talk about her and her life, and with Paula Heredia, who's the editor of Finding Krista. So we'll be talking about her a lot this month. She'll be right with us, right here.
That's good.
And the thing about her too is that, and which comes through in the film, it has much as, speaking hard truths, there's a very loving, nurturing nature about her, and that comes so clearly in the film, and just the way that she's interacting with you and keeping your attention, and you can just tell there's just a lot of love. And she's just having a great time. Like you said, it's like she's sharing a parable.
Yeah.
I see the film as like a video poem,
Yeah.
and kind of reminds me in that vein, which it
And
reminds me of the LA Rebellion, early Haile Garima films, and which is a huge inspiration. Actually, Bush Mama is one of the biggest inspirations, and the few shots that I reference in Keon. And so it pays homage to the LA Rebellion filmmakers and movement.
yes, when you take the image, when Keon takes the photo of the woman walking down the street, I definitely thought of Billy Woodbury and all of those guys. So tell us a little bit, E.G., about the actors in Keon, because how did you find them? And boy, they were so great.
Well, we're blessed in the Twin Cities to have amazing theater actors. Minnesota is second theater per capita, next to New York, and and I worked with Marion McClinton for about 8 years. I was his assistant director, and eventually his assistant. And he would say, Twin Cities actors can stand toe to toe to, any actors in Chicago or New York, and it really shows. So we're very blessed here to have a very strong community of theater actors, and I use a lot of theater actors for my film because I've been a theater artist pretty much since I landed in the Twin Cities, and so a lot of them are from the theater community, but they're also it's their first films. A number of them, except for the lead actor, Namir, the young man. Most of the other actors is the first time that they've been in film.
They were amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, they're really wonderful. And the great thing about it is, I gave them a lot of leeway to really make those scenes, especially the coffee shop scene.
Loved it.
I wanted it to be very naturalistic, and so I gave them leeway to improvise, to just be themselves, because I wanted to capture that joy, and the only way to really do that is to give them freedom and not try to tailor what they need to do or be, and so yeah.
I think that scene is probably the best. I mean, it's just a great film, but I think that one really epitomizes sort of this dichotomy that we experience. And Kate, I would love to hear your response to this. As young Black people encountering white people on a daily basis in our lives, on the subway, in a coffee shop, you work in the restaurant industry, Kate. I mean, it's almost as though you can't express yourself. You're prohibited from being yourself because you don't know what the consequences might be.
Yeah.
So how do you reckon with that?
I think I've taken different approaches. For better or worse, I've had a tremendous amount of experience with this. I grew up in a mostly white neighborhood in New Jersey and went to have pretty much only gone to mostly white schools. And so, yeah, you're really nothing can really prepare you for when you're I put in air quotes adults, because obviously when you're a teenager, you're not an adult, but you do get treated, especially as a Black teenager, you get treated as and perceived in the world as an adult, even though, you get sexualized and aged up very quickly as a Black person in America. There's not a right way to do it because, like you said, there's not you're trying to manage how other people perceive you, and that's really not possible. It's and that coffee shop scene, I can't tell you the number of times that I have been in a coffee shop, in an ice cream place, in a toy store, in a sneaker store, in a movie theater, in wherever, with my friends, and even if I'm not with only Black people, I or us or we, the Black people, get looked at differently when we are experiencing joy in public, and it's an incredibly it feels more and more radical the more I realize how radical it is. um I you know, again, you know, referring to lessons from Camille, she was really the first person I met who cared enough not to care. She cared so much about us and our community that she almost took it upon herself to be the life of the party and to say and do things and be radically joyous. And sometimes, you know, she'd say jokes, and my grandmother, who's also Camille's cousin, likes to say that Camille could tell jokes that no one else could tell, because if anybody else told them, they get smacked in the face. And I think that was a life lesson that I really took to heart. And as I've gotten older, you know, I try really hard to be, if I'm going to be happy and joyous in public, then I try not to hold back, even though that comes at great risk. I think that the reward of people, other Black people first, and then everyone else, seeing that not only is Black joy possible and beautiful, but it's not threatening, that me being happy does not take away from your happiness. It is not pie. We can all be happy and have a good time all together. I think that the reward is so much higher than the risk, and I think that Camille understood that. And I think that that often you understand that as a kid, and then you lose that at some point. Like as a small child, you understand that if everyone's happy, you think about, like, you get a bunch of 3-year-olds at a party together, and they all just start screaming because they're all having a great time. Well, they're all having a great time, and that's wonderful, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then some point, you know, the world kind of you know, very literally often beats it out of you. So you know, it was a beautiful part in the film. And then I've also been on the other side, where I've been in the service industry, and there's a bunch of teenagers being rowdy in your store, and you're like, okay, come on, guys, come on, like, please, like, this is a place of business. But I try not to stop people. Obviously, it's different now during coronavirus, but I try not to stop. I would try not to stop people. I'd be like, let them go. As long as, you know, if they're having fun, then we can all be having fun. There's no reason why we can't all be having a good time. And I think that, you know, but it is radical. It is a radical choice to be Black and joyous in public, for sure.
Absolutely. I think and I think, again, back to why I think that this film is, Keon is so special. We're getting some questions from our audience now. We should go to, before we run out of time. I knew I was going to get to a heavy conversation with you guys, but let's go to a couple of questions from our audience members. And this is for EG. It says, your music choice and your choice to make the film in Black and white seem like a nod to film noir. And was this in your intention, and why?
Not specifically film noir, but more specifically the Black arts movement, more specifically the LA Rebellion filmmakers, and French New Wave and neo-realism films. So early filmmaking, but also Black photographers. I started out as probably the first artistic art form that I really felt I could make my own and really be an artist in was photography. And I primarily shot in black and white. Very few times would I shoot in color. And so Keon is a fair bit autobiographical, you know, in terms of, you know, the photography and and just studying those different film movements. And then jazz is the greatest American art form and the most democratic art form. And so, when you're dealing with issues of freedom, um, you know, to me, it just felt right that, that in the script, it starts with a call, and it starts with a jazz song. And it's almost a calling back to Africa, but also a calling of, calling up of the moment and calling up of the story. And so I really felt like it needed to be rooted in jazz, but also acknowledging the Twin Cities, because there's a very strong hip hop community here, that I was also a part of, and ran a spoken word and hip hop record label for 10 years. And so,
Wow.
and a lot of the film is a love song to the Twin Cities. And so I wanted to get all of those things in there. Yeah. And
You did. You did it well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Keita, question for you. How did growing up in an environment so rich in communication and Black history shape you as an adult and as a writer?
Well, it made me like a fun, weird kid for sure. I am very lucky to have two very creative and talented Black parents who refuse to, like I said, the world tries to kind of beat not only joy out of you, but creativity out of you. And they kind of refuse to let that go away. So when I expressed a desire to become a writer and become a creative, I was really lucky to have parents who were like, amazing, please do that. Just, also have a job so you can eat. And they continue to be incredibly supportive of everything that I try to do, whatever it is. And communication is key to that. And you can see that in the film. I think EG really hit it on the head that Camille was incredibly loving with the way that she dealt with me always, but especially on film and Take Your Bags. And my parents are the same way. They are, and my grandparents are the same way. Most of my cousins are the same way, not just Camille, but my elders for sure are the same way, where they are always communicating and encouraging and wanting to have a conversation. And that has been true of me since I could speak. I cannot remember a time where I was a child in a room of adults and I was told to be quiet or to stay in the corner, or that I was to be seen and not heard. That never happened in my family. It was always that I was allowed to speak, even if it was gibberish or rambling about Thomas the Tank Engine, whatever it was. I was always allowed to communicate, and that gives you a great deal of confidence to continue to try and communicate, even when the world doesn't want you to.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things I was going to mention. Another thing I love about the film is just how self-assured you are. It's beautiful to see just, this young child that's just so comfortable, so natural, and so self-assured on screen, which you don't see a lot. And that's part of for me, the connection to Keon, with these young people. They're so, they carry so much energy and confidence and brilliance. It's just, and you want to love them. You want to contain that forever. Like, if that could be bottled, it would just be pure gold. And I loved your interaction with her. And and it just, my kids are getting to that age where they're moving from childhood to young adulthood, the tween. And so you start to remember that, and you just it's like, no, I don't want that to slip away yet.
Don't go there yet, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that in both films, the confidence had a lot to do with the outfits, because I still wish I had a red turtleneck like that. I mean, that I looked great. I forgot. It was awesome. And
yes, you did.
And I made a point of watching the credits to check for the costume design in Keon, because I was like, man, I need to see if I can get some fits like that. I have no problem running around the city being joyful if I look that good all the time.
I
Get it?
know. Even playing basketball, they look
Yeah,
good.
that's. I'm terrible at basketball, but I do it. You know what I mean? I would be great.
Oh, goodness. Well, I think we're coming towards the end of our time, guys, but I want to first give EG a chance to let us know what you're doing next and how we can continue to see your work.
Well, a couple things. We are literally getting ready within the next couple days of launching a streaming platform, a film streaming platform. And it's filmstream.com. So it's stream, but spelled with 2 E's. And you can find new neighbors on there, and independent films, short films right now, but also features eventually. And a number of them have played at Sundance and festivals, major festivals across the world. And then working on a project now where I'm working with the Guthrie Theater, which is the largest regional theater in the country, and they've done Christmas Carol for 46 years. And because of COVID, they can't do the production that they normally do, and so it's being reimagined. Has a series of monologues, but it's working from a performance script that Charles Dickens created for himself, that he would tour with, and he eventually toured with it to the U.S. And so taking that and it's divided into 4 sections called staves, which are basically like verses or stanzas, and 4 actors are taking each a stave each, and performing it. And we're going to film that as a film, not just sort of setting up and shooting the performance, but we're going to reimagine it as a film.
Wow.
And so very excited about that and what that'll come out to be.
That sounds amazing. I love that combination.
Yeah.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so it's a co-direction with Joe Hodge, who's the artistic director of the theater. He's adapting it for the stage, and then I'm adapting it for film. And so it's this interesting amalgamation of film and theater.
Well, please do keep us in mind when that's ready to premiere.
I will. Thank you.
And Mr. Keita, what are you up to next?
Well, I recently collaborated with a friend of mine to submit. Well, we're not sure if it's in yet, but to submit to Nudie Magazine, NUDIE, which is an art magazine that focuses on Black and trans people of color in general, to give them a space and a voice to share anything from creative selfies to poetry, which we did poetry and an illustration for that.
Wow.
My words and her illustrating. Parker Otts is my friend who did the illustration. Other than that, just trying to, just like everybody else, trying to keep our head above water and get through to the next step. Get onto better days. Get out of this mess that we're in right now.
Which is the only way we can do that is to go vote, right?
That's right.
Vote.
Oh, vote.
Please. So you do nothing else with your Tuesday in November, please.
Oh, man. Vote.
Yes, indeed. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been an awesome pleasure to speak with both of you. We could go on, I'm sure, for a couple hours, but Matthew does have to go to bed sometime tonight. So our amazing technician, I don't want to keep him too much longer, but thank you both for joining us. And I want to say to our audience, we have one more night of the series tomorrow night, and it's 3 short films, Voting Matters by Dawn Porter, A Prayer for America by A.K. Shandu, and Marisol by Zoe Sajakrap Junko. And they're 3 amazing short films, and I hope you'll join us for the Q&A there as well. Thank you both again. Keep up the great work.
Yes, thank you. It's been wonderful to connect with you and We've just had some great conversations. I mean, not even about the film series, but it's been wonderful and so wonderful to see you. I would say in person.
In person, I know. As close as we can get at the moment. It's in person.
Right. But yes, thank you. It's been really wonderful and great to meet you. And yeah, it's wonderful to just see you all grown up now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you for keeping Camille's work alive. She would be so thrilled that this was happening. I know she would, and she would want to be on the Zoom and would say, "No, we're not done," and keep going for several more hours.
And we'd be on at least 2 more hours.
Yeah, definitely.
It's true.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
See you all.